Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second session of GAAPP Academy for 2023. I'm Lindsay DeSantis, and I'm the Executive Director for the Global Allergy and Airways Patient Platform. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we get started, I wanted to announce that this session is being recorded and will be posted on our website to share with your colleagues and teams. We'll also be presenting today in English. However, we will offer Spanish interpretation. If you'd like to enter the Spanish interpretation room, you'll want to click on interpretation and select Spanish now. I'd also like to take a moment to thank our GAAPP Academy sponsors. Without their generous support, GAAPP Academy would not be possible. We'll be offering question and answer at the end of the session. Please leave your questions in the chat or in the Q&A tab, and we'll answer you live or by email after the event. Today's GAAPP Academy is on volunteer management, and we're joined today by Sukhendra Rompally, the founder and CEO of Chizuba. Chizuba is an online volunteering platform that allows users to connect with NGOs or corporations and contribute to without having to be there at the site physically. Since 2018, Chizuba has matched over 12,000 online projects with tasks that can include social media, graphic design, translation services, and literally anything that can be done online. Now, with over 10,000 NGOs in more than 100 countries and about 150,000 volunteers, Chizuba continues to grow. I'd like to turn it over today to our presenter to give us an overview on volunteer management and engagement.
Thanks a lot for that introduction, Lindsay. Really appreciate it. Hello, everyone. It's good morning, good evening. I think you're joining in from different parts of the world. Always nice to meet with global audiences. As Lindsay was mentioning, I'm Sukhendra, founder and CEO of Chizuba. So today we want to talk about the usage of technology. Three topics that we really want to cover is how nonprofits can leverage technology to scale faster, how virtual volunteering has kind of boomed mostly since COVID as well, and lastly, gamification, which is a very important aspect as we move forward to engage more millennial and Gen Z audiences. So just to get started, I'm going to share my screen. So to start with, on the technology front, I was reading it somewhere that the world, if you are putting a timeline of how the world has progressed in the last, let's say, 200 years, the amount of progress that we have seen from, let's say, 1900 to 2000 is less than what we saw from 2000 to 2010. And what we saw from 2000 to 2010 is less than what we saw from 2010 to 2014. So every year, the speed at which technology is progressing the world is increasing rapidly. And most industries are catching up with this. You might have not thought about self-driving cars a decade ago, or space travel at this scale wouldn't have been possible. In fact, space travel only was even possible 50 to 60 years ago, right? So, or the internet has brought us so close. Social media has given access for one and all to communicate with people, no matter which part of the world they are in. Technology is everywhere. There's one industry which hasn't adopted technology as much, but which I believe if that industry does adapt to technology fast enough, we would probably see a better world in a faster time frame. And that industry is the nonprofit industry that we are talking to today, and we all are a part of this industry. My biggest takeaway from working in the nonprofit industry in the last decade or so is, while the heart is always at the right place for every nonprofit professional, they are so much caught up with the mission part of it, the goal and the why, and the what is more often than not, how is more often than not the most optimal way. And that's why I want to focus on technology today, how nonprofits can leverage technology to scale faster and to get to their mission in a smaller time frame. Um, Roughly going to touch 4 different points here. One is using a volunteer management software. Most of you, particularly the smaller nonprofits, which have very less human resources in-house, a lot can be outsourced to nonprofits, and once these lot can be outsourced to volunteers. Sorry, and once these volunteers take up these tasks, the communication managing of these people makes it that much more challenging, particularly in a remote setting as well. There are so many volunteer management softwares available, including ones which are free, which will allow you to manage these resources effectively, no matter where they are, and help you with the reporting of these as well. If you were to analyze how many nonprofits were, how many volunteers were supporting you in the last year, how effective were they, and what was the impact that you were able to see because of their intervention. So using volunteering management software would be, if you are not already using, I doubt, but that would definitely be the first step. Today, finding volunteers is much, much easier than, let's say, it was a decade ago or even 5 years ago. The number of online volunteer portals that have come up, and they are increasingly more volunteering portals that comes up. Chizuba is actually one of them as well. But there is Volunteer Match, there is Catch a Fire. You will have some local online volunteering tools as well, which are these platforms connecting nonprofits with volunteers. So finding volunteers is not that difficult anymore. And today, I think most nonprofits should start leveraging the power of internet to find the right set of volunteers and to engage them better. Social media is needs no introduction. Ever since Facebook took over, then we got into Instagram, LinkedIn. All these social media tools are highly effective in propagating what you are doing. Your mission goes out to the world in a more effective fashion. You will have advocates, you'll have champions. Funding becomes relatively easier because everyone can find your work and can validate it. It's not the case like 20 years ago, where funding usually goes to nonprofits which are connected to a certain network. Today, the world of social media has made it relatively easier for everyone to spread their word as effectively and fast. And the last piece, which is our focus area for Chizuba as well, is virtual volunteering. We started a virtual volunteering platform in 2018. And personally, as my background says, I am an engineer by education. I volunteered for the first time in 2011 for a nonprofit in Malaysia. I felt more people should have an opportunity like that. So I came back, I started an ISEC chapter, which enables students to volunteer abroad. So after enabling hundreds of students to volunteer abroad, I felt like there was joy in the field of volunteering. But as work took over and I moved different places, I lived in Russia, Taiwan, I was working, never did I feel the same joy as it was when I was volunteering. So that was the time when I felt like, okay, the world needs more people to volunteer, and technology was my way of how we can scale the field of volunteering in a much faster way. And that was the first thought of we starting Chizuba, which by the way means thank you in Burmese. So we started Chizuba to enable everyone to volunteer from wherever they are present. So in 2018, when we first launched the product, in less than 2 weeks, we had people from more than 50 countries signing up as volunteers. So we realized that volunteering, virtual volunteering specifically, because our tool was focused on virtual volunteering, we realized people wanted it. People appreciated it, that they could volunteer from wherever they are. It transcends the borders, it transcends the time zone, the languages sometimes, and connects talent to not to nonprofits which need this talent. So if you haven't ventured into virtual volunteering already, it's never late. COVID has, as we have seen, expedited all of this for us. There was a time in 2020, 2021, where virtual volunteering was probably the only way how volunteers could have been leveraged. So I would talk a lot about virtual volunteering today to give you more insights of why should you probably start looking into virtual volunteering if you haven't. The global talent pool that's available, while there is a lot of talent which really wants to give back, unfortunately, talent is unevenly distributed. A classic case is I come from India, and there is so much of IT talent in India, whereas in a lot of countries in Europe, finance and economy is is better, right? So, or in the US, there are a lot of English speakers, right? So if someone were to learn the English language, it's much easier to find English tutors in the US compared to anyone else. So the spread of talent is unfortunately very uneven, and internet and virtual volunteering actually levels the playing field for everyone. So today, because of virtual volunteering, you can access the talent, the IT talent in India, the English speaking talent in the US, or the finance and accounting talent in Europe without you having to have a presence there. So the idea of having access to global talent, which then adds with very diverse skill sets as well. While we have enabled about 12,000 odd projects, 150,000 people from more than 100 countries have been supporting over 10,000 nonprofits. What we have noticed is the best matches are the ones which are from different regions. I'm going to give you a couple of examples and case studies as well. But whenever a nonprofit is in a country A and a volunteer is in a country B, when they collaborate to solve a common problem, we noticed that those kind of skill sets, the value add that a foreign volunteer brings to the table is immense, because in addition to the skill set, there is a cultural aspect of it. There's a learning aspect of it. The ideas are, as nonprofits, we understand this segment better. So if you're working in the field of education in Uruguay, you understand the problem better than anyone else. There is no question around it. But the solutions that you try to approach to solve these problems are from you. And I think that's there is this limited scope of solution that you think of because you've tried and tested several stuff, but within your own area. And Finland, for example, has seen a massive success in the field of education. So a volunteer coming from Finland will probably be able to share their experiences of what worked for them in their country, and that we've seen has added immense value. And virtual volunteering again gives access to something like that. And most importantly, it's also very, very cost effective. When you think about it, to engage volunteers in a physical setting, there's logistics, there's transportation, there's of course time that you spend on commuting, whether it's the volunteer or whether it's you. There's a lot of costs involved in it. Virtual volunteering, in a way, effectively kills all of that, right? Like, of course, you still need internet and a device, but other than that, there's pretty much nothing else that you need to add into your own expenses. So it's a very cost-effective way to find and engage volunteers. And lastly, it's very, very flexible. One primary reason why we started Chazuba in 2018 was our audiences were mostly either students or working professionals. And this was a big challenge. We noticed that most of the times when people wanted to volunteer, particularly if they already have a job or if they were full-time students, the challenge was they have the job at the same time as the nonprofits were also working. So for both of them to collaborate in a physical setting, it was only possible either on the weekends, which sometimes was also not fair for the nonprofits to work on the weekends, or the volunteer has to skip a day's work, which made it that much more challenging for volunteers to really engage in initiatives like these. What virtual volunteering does is it increases the flexibility. People don't have to meet in person necessarily. So after work, you can get on a Zoom call like this, have this conversation, and let the volunteer work from wherever they are and get the job done. The style of communication is going to be significantly different. You've got to be a lot more clear about your deliverables. It's not the same as in-person setting, but once you crack the code, that increased flexibility will get you results much more effectively. So yeah, in terms of virtual volunteering, I think at the core, it's about accessing global talent and reducing the cost and increasing flexibility, which allows you to find very, very diverse skill sets. This is one example of a virtual volunteering project. We've run 12,000 of them now, but this is an example of how efficient it could be. This is a nonprofit, SIDE. They are based in Mexico City. They are into human rights. And they were looking for someone who is very good with financial reporting. And they couldn't find anyone in their locality for this. And previously, they would actually outsource this to freelancers, which would cost them a fair bit of money. And when they approached Chazuba, that was what they were looking for. They were like, can we get a financial reporting template that we could use year on year by changing these numbers? And the template is much more complex because it has to work with Excels, and this Excel data has to go into some charts so that they're auto-generated. So when SIDE approached us, we worked with volunteer Asis, who works for a company called Tata, which is one of the biggest companies in the world, definitely the biggest in India. So Asis joins the project, and Asis works as a senior executive in the finance department for this large company, Tata. Comes in, the nonprofit is very clear. They knew what they wanted. They wanted a very easy to use internal financial reporting system, so that every year they can compare, they can change the data as the expenses change. They put that stuff and they get the reporting, which made it that much more easier for SIDE to report it to their stakeholders. So initially we thought, the language would be challenging because SIDE is from Mexico, speaking Spanish. Asis is from India. English is his preferred language. There was a time zone difference of 12 hours. But when we looked at it as the end result, this was one of the best experiences SIDE ever had with volunteering. In fact, they wrote a couple of blog articles as well. I definitely refer you to check that out as well, in terms of what kind of impact the volunteer has created in a long run, right? It was significantly different in terms of, yes, many times when volunteers come and they make some updates and it's great, like it helps them for now. But projects like these enable SIDE to have a long-lasting impact. Even after the partnership was ended, it enabled them to continue using that. And for us as well, it's a great relationship. He learned a lot from SIDE. It was a win-win for everyone. So that's the power of virtual volunteering. As this presentation ends, I would actually take you through what types of virtual volunteering projects are possible, how you can start using them today in your own organization, and some hygiene around what probably is a better way for you to engage virtual volunteering so that the experience is great for everyone. So I'm going to get into that at some point in time today. But for now, moving on, wanted to discuss about the third part today, which is the gamification piece. What I think will be a game changer, particularly in the nonprofit sector. I mean, most of us we've seen younger population. Some of us have kids. We've noticed that there is a huge change in how the younger population is doing things today compared to what we did like a decade ago, 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago. Gamification has taken over everywhere, from learning today when people are talking about e-learning. they are like all the ed tech that has come in, or even the fintech that has come in, right? When you look into how people do things, it is very connected to them feeling it like a game. In fact, and this is not just for younger population alone. My dad, who actually doesn't want to walk, but he needs to because of his health condition, and it's as simple as iPhone counting steps and telling him that, okay, you've reached this many steps today. Yesterday it was this much. So, you just got to have 500 more steps to beat yesterday's target. And it worked wonders for someone like him to just go that extra mile and say like, okay, I just want to beat yesterday's numbers because I get this new badge. What is that badge? Honestly, nothing, right? Like, it doesn't translate to anything. But the concept of how companies and technologies are able to leverage the idea of gamification to enable people to use the product in a different way has changed this space completely. So at its core, gamification is where you set some rules and you give challenging tasks to the user, and then incentivize or reward them for achieving something. That is what increases the motivation. That is what brings the user back to your system again and again. And you think like, well, this is what is with gamification? How is it related to the nonprofit industry? And the reason I specifically wanted to talk about gamification today is we could effectively gamify our volunteering system, which enable more and more people to come back and volunteer. So for that, I'm going to take you through some details as well. I'm going to give you a demonstration of what we did in terms of gamification to get more people to volunteer. But at its core, gamification is about you create a leaderboard, you provide any kinds of incentives like badges or rewards, you incorporate a more challenging environment, things like which are simple to do tasks, but they go stepwise, like the example I gave with my dad, right? Like today you do 500, tomorrow you do 700 steps, 1,000 steps, 1,200. So you have that slight increase so that you push people a little more every day to do better than what they did yesterday. So at its core, it's that you can design a multi-game system which includes everyone. So a leaderboard would be a very good example of a multiplayer game where you say, okay, whoever contributes highest in terms of volunteering for this month gets a certain reward. You can define what that reward is, of course, but that's where you are getting people to compete with each other in a positive fashion so that they will contribute more. Whereas a single player game thought process is more like what I did with my dad, right? Like yesterday you were this, today if you become this, you get this reward. Tomorrow if you become that, you get this reward. And there's nothing right or wrong around which approach works. So when I give you an example today, I'm going to take you through both a single player system as well as a multiplayer system. So I'm going to start sharing our product to give you an overview of how we use a gamification system as well as virtual volunteering. So first things on the virtual volunteering space, just to show you how what a virtual volunteering project would look like. Let's say these are all the options, right? From translating a book from English to Thai, to writing a pitch deck, to doing some research, to teaching German online, to tutoring undeserved children, working in a school virtually, writing an annual report, building a website, designing an animation video. The list is endless. As you can see, there are almost 2,500 projects at this point in time on Chizuba. What this does is it allows volunteers, that is, to come and say, okay, I am good at content writing and research. I care about healthcare and environment, and I want to support nonprofits in, let's say, the United States. So they search, they find these projects, And okay, for example, Google AdWords, right? So the nonprofit is looking to find someone to manage their Google Ads, which, by the way, Google Ads gives $10,000 credit to nonprofits. So if you haven't already taken advantage of that, do take it. So you could what the nonprofit was asking here is like, okay, we do have the Google AdWords grant to generate more traffic to our website so that we can convert them into donors and help support the disaster response. So stepwise process of how this needs to be done, clear deliverable, what is expected from the volunteer, what kind of impact will this create on this nonprofit, its potential fundraising, approximately how long will this take, 2 hours per week for 8 weeks. You can mention any kind of requirements, what it is that the volunteer needs to have. This could be language, this could be specific tools or skill sets that they need, and more about the nonprofit, right? Like, who is the nonprofit? Who are you? This is very important for the volunteer to understand who they are helping, particularly when they're using their time and skill. Who is it that they're helping? They can go to the nonprofit's profile, they can go to the nonprofit's website, learn more about them, and then they apply. So this is typically how a virtual volunteering project looks like. As a nonprofit, we have resources for you. This is a sample that I'm showing you, but we have resources where you go and say, like, post a new volunteering project, and you can literally see we've created hundreds of these templates where because many times I know it can be challenging for you to understand what it is that you want. How do you put it in words? So you say, like, okay, if you need help with audio and video editing, and you want, is the project about audio recording of something, or is it about designing a promotional video, or is it about photo editing? So let's say you want to design a promotional video. So you put in, like, okay, this is what I want, designing a promotional video. You make some edits. How many minutes long should the video be? What is the description? What is the stepwise process? Everything is readily available for you to start using. But if you want, you can make changes to that as well. So you just go and make those necessary changes if needed. You can delete a step, you can add a step. You could add more requirements if you feel there is a need to add more requirements. You could change the impact, and you can say, like, okay, this is going to be like a 3-minute long video. You could add more impact items. You could reduce that. Timelines as well. This is what our recommendation is for a project like this. But you can say, like, no, I want it really in 2 weeks itself. And maybe I want them volunteer to put in more time, let's say 10 hours per week. And if you can either say, like, I'm flexible, I can get the project done anytime. Or you could say, like, I just need this project to end by 23rd of March. In the next 1 week, I need this video to be out. So there is a fixed start date and a fixed end date. So you put everything, and these are the projects that will get reflected. As I was showing here, employees of corporations, students, basically volunteers will be able to see these projects and will be able to work closely with you on these projects. So that's how easy and simple it is for you to start creating virtual volunteering projects. You could just go and find anything, right? Like, as you see, there are in marketing, in training and coaching, in IT, design, content writing, or even administration stuff, as simple as, like, conducted data analysis. For me, this is the data that I have, analyze it and share some reports so that we can understand. Or with fundraising, have a strategy around fundraising, or writing some grant applications, in English interaction sessions, so conducting of mock interviews, HR trainings, whatever that you can think of that can be completed online. We have created templates, and this we keep on adding, because many times we've seen nonprofits be very, very innovative as well, right? Like, we didn't have this template of translating an ebook from English to Thai. A nonprofit from Canada, they specifically needed it for the use case, so they picked it up. Or tutoring undeserved children. This is a project that's created by the nonprofit, right? So this is something that we didn't provide as a template, but they learned, like, okay, this is how we can leverage it. So whenever you're thinking of virtual volunteering, of course, what we provide is a guidance of, okay, these are all the projects that you could think of. But the world of virtual volunteering is much, much bigger than than just the templates that we are providing. So I definitely urge you to check out Chezuba, but you could also check out Volunteer Match. You could check out Catch a Fire. These are portals where more often than not, you will find templates to create your own virtual volunteering opportunities and start posting them. So you'll find the right set of audiences to come and help you. And the last piece that I wanted to again take you back is challenges, the gamification piece of how I said we use gamification to trigger more and more volunteering participation in nonprofit initiatives. So we take a 3-step process to volunteering in general whenever we are working with corporations and trying to build a volunteering culture in corporations. We divide all volunteering into 3 folds. One, what we call as challenges, is micro tasks volunteering. The goal about challenges is this is not high impact. I don't personally believe that someone can do something in 15 minutes and then that's going to change the world for good. The goal of challenges is to get them to the next step, if that makes sense, right? So get someone interested in a particular topic, spread awareness about the topic, ask them to engage in little tasks so that they are connected to the topic so they can go to the next step. The next step typically is more of an activity. An activity is a traditional calendar that you have been doing for a long time. These could be like have conversations with senior citizens in the shelter home, or do a beach cleanup drive, or a tree plantation drive, whitewash the school building, the traditional volunteering that you think of, which again still involves a lot of participation. Again, I'm a big advocate of virtual volunteering, but virtual volunteering is not a substitute for traditional volunteering. It's an add-on. Traditional volunteering is here to stay. It will continue to happen because that is your avenue to build a great relationship with volunteers and donors, and that's an avenue for volunteers to be very connected to what the nonprofit is doing. So what we do is we use these gamified challenges as a first step to get people interested into the topic, then use activities as a traditional form of volunteering so that they can engage more, and then finally move into projects which are more skill-based volunteering, so people can give back to society in their own time in a flexible way, but this is more long-lasting impact. So with challenges, we can run through some examples. We create challenges based on themes. There is a World Earth Day happening very soon. Recently, there was International Women's Day, right? So we pick these themes and we create these challenges based on themes. I can give an example of LGBTQ rights, for example, right? So we give tasks which are very simple and easy to perform. So, for example, watch the following video that maps out the history of LGBTQ community across the globe, and write a short note on these rights in your respective country, right? So asking the volunteer to watch the video to learn about this and then share their opinion in the form of a writing so that we can understand what they have learned. Or take the second step is, take this Harvard implicit bias test, complete the transgender IIT, and share what score you have. The idea of both these two tasks is for the volunteers to learn a bit more about themselves and get themselves aware about the topic of LGBTQ rights. And then stage 2, which would be more like they can now take an action. So action would be something like create a social media post against discrimination and share it with your friends, or support a local LGBTQ business by buying their product and then promoting them on social media. Again, a simple action doesn't take a lot of effort from them. You might even think like, what is this even volunteering? And the goal here is get them to do something tiny and simple to get connected to your vision or what you're doing. I mean, these challenges that we create are theme-based, right? They are not specific to one nonprofit, but you can start thinking about what can I do in a gamification module where I give them certain tasks and which will be easy to perform, and then move them to the next task. And as people engage with you more and more in these tasks, the more they are connected to what you're doing, and hence the more their level of contribution will be, whether it is taking that next step of skill-based volunteering projects, where they're able to spend a lot more time and use their skills to take you forward, or whether it's to become donors and eventually help you out from a financial perspective as well. Another example I can give you on the mental health awareness space as well, right? So asking people to do something very simple. This happened in the Mental Health Awareness Week, where we are asking them to go for a jog, run for or a walk outside, and take a picture and share with us. Very simple, easy to do tasks, but the goal again is giving them simple tasks will get them hooked to a certain cause area that you are concerned with. And then eventually when you ask them to do something more meaningful, they have already built an interest in the cause and a relationship with your nonprofit. And to reward this, what we do is we have both the multiplayer thing, which is more on the leaderboard side. So we actually show which person has been volunteering more. So we have a point system that we set up. And of course, these are not real data. I can't share real data. So obviously this is made up data, but it gives you an idea of, how we set this up, that in a particular community, in a particular locality, who is the one who's volunteering more, and then giving them this sense of, okay, you are in the top 3 people who have created impact, and then converting that impact of what this impact means, right? In terms of volunteering hours, how many volunteering hours was it, or in terms of the dollar value of how much your impact has helped us in terms of the sheer amount of dollars that we either saved or that we were able to raise, providing that sense of numbers for particularly Gen Z and millennial population works a long way in them feeling good about this entire process and hence wanting to do more. So in a multiplayer system, getting people to know how other people are performing actually worked wonders for us to get people to do more. So in a way, that's why we call it gamification. It's a system in which you are, I think manipulating would be the wrong word, but you are nudging people to do more because you're creating that positive social peer environment. And from a single player perspective, we have created a lot of these badges, and tell them like, okay, if you've clocked 25 volunteering hours, you get this badge, or if you have completed 3 volunteering projects, you get this badge. And whenever we are working with institutions, universities or corporations, what we tend to do is use this in a real world reward mechanism. So for example, if you're working with a corporation, to encourage more employees to volunteer, what we would do is, hey, if you get 3 of these badges, we will send you a goodie, like a t-shirt that you have achieved something you can proudly wear in your office environment, right? And if the corporation actually is very serious about increasing volunteering within their organization, then we ask them to financially incentivize the employees as well, right? Like whoever finishes in the top 3 of the leaderboard will get a big amount of money that they can donate to their favorite charity, right? So, or whoever has more badges will have lunch with the CEO. Anything where you kind of incentivize people to do more will go a long way also in them being more committed to this. And of course, I mean, that's the reporting is very important as well, where you always keep an eye, and that's where technology comes in handy, where you always keep an eye in terms of, okay, how many volunteers did we engage, how much donations have we raised, and what areas my volunteers are coming from. What kind of assistance are they giving us? Are they helping us more in the IT space or in writing content or tutoring kids? You keeping this track does two things. One, it'll help you understand for the next year what kind of volunteers would you be needing, what kind of scale can you go with. But secondly, I think it builds trust and credibility for you within your stakeholder system, where you keep consistently reporting this via your newsletters or via your annual reports of how many people you have engaged and how much that means in terms of the impact value. That could potentially be a game changer for you in building trust and credibility. So I'm going to end it there. And I know it's been a topic ranging from technology to virtual volunteering to gamification. But in the interest of time, I would say like I wanted to touch base on 3 of those topics. And if anyone wants to understand any of these topics more, I'll be more than happy to have a one-on-one and see like where we can really help. But at its core, I definitely implore you to explore volunteering platforms out there. There are a bunch of them. Start looking into virtual volunteering. It's very effective in getting access to global talent and scaling your organization effectively. And start thinking about incorporating gamification. It's a great way for you to engage with Millennial and Gen Z workforces. They are really motivated with something of that sort, and they are the future. So they will play a very vital role in the years to come for you. Any questions? I see there's a bit in chat, but yeah, any questions?
Yes, I've actually, Tanya Winders, who is the president for GAAPP, has a question. Tanya, you now have the floor. You're able to chat.
Thank you, Lindsay. Really great job on this presentation and impressive what you have put together. And I love the why behind the what you're doing and the way that you're connecting nonprofits with talent across the world. So I think that, one of the things that comes back to us so many times is I have a project. We don't have the staff, most of our organizations are very small, volunteer led. Where do I start? If I have like a need for content creation or for social media engagement and support, like how do I sort of start to put together a project plan and then identify where there may be volunteer match opportunities?
A good way, and it's funny I start talking about this right now, is I don't know if you've explored ChatGPT. That's a great place for you to actually start looking into it, because the difference between something like Google, where you ask the same question, is it can be heavily influenced by what people want to say. ChatGPT kind of gives you a more I would say more unbiased answer that way, right? So I think that's something we're incorporating as well. I didn't really include that yet in our product, but what we are doing is this problem that you said is not necessarily only with nonprofits. Many times a nonprofit is clear that, hey, we want this grant application to be written or a fundraising proposal to be written, and volunteers who are very skilled with content writing might have never addressed a topic like this. They could be amazing content writers in the field of technology, but they might not know a lot about cancer awareness. So if they want to write and if they have to write a proposal in that space, they do struggle. So what we have done is we've incorporated a ChatGPT API within the product. So volunteers can literally, if they pick a project and they're like, I'm lost, I don't know where to get started with it, that's a quick way for them to ask AI, get some answers. AI is not a replacement there, but it gives them some indication of, okay, maybe that's a direction that I need to take. And I would say nonprofits can start off in exactly the same fashion as well. A lot of these portals like Chizuba and others do have those templates ready. So even if it is just like sign up and then start exploring templates of what can be possible in volunteering. Many times you're not thinking idea first and then finding a solution. You're looking at all the solutions out there, and then you get an idea, oh, I can also use this kind of volunteering project in my organization. So that's a great start. If you just sign up on these portals and start looking at these templates, maybe you'll already get some idea. But even before you do that, today we have the advantage of technology of ChatGPT. So you could just go and say, this is the problem that I have in my nonprofit. We are exactly what you said, like we are a small staff, and we want to grow to this level. We want to grow 5 times, but we don't have the budget to hire people. Where do I get started? See what ChatGPT has to say.
Great, thank you. And maybe we'll just do a follow-up. If you want to drop that in the chat, that link, or if we want to send out kind of a follow-up email to all of the members about that resource, because I think you're absolutely right. Sometimes it's overwhelming when you just Google something like that and you're like, okay, that was not helpful. So yeah, thanks. Any other questions, Lindsay? Do we have other questions?
I don't see any in the chat right now. Please feel free to add any additional questions. I actually did have a question just in terms of logistics. Is there a cap on the amount of different projects that you can submit at any given time?
It changes from one organization to another, of course. On Chezuba, we do not have a cap yet. But what we have noticed is at the end of the day, these are 2 humans, like a nonprofit and a volunteer who are working with each other. So whenever we notice either a nonprofit putting too many projects or a volunteer applying for too many projects, we definitely go back and start talking to them like, hey, are you sure you can manage these many projects on either sides, right? It happens on both sides. Sometimes volunteers apply for like 20 projects. And then we're like, are you realistic that you can take this up? So likewise, if you're a nonprofit and you put up like 20 different projects, the same question comes down, and there is going to be 20 different volunteers. Do you think you have the ability today to manage 20 of them? And if the answer is, yeah, we have like 5-member staff who will handle 4 each, then yes, there's no cap at all. But if it is like, yeah, I think that makes sense, because many times people get very excited, right? Like, oh, I watched a movie and I'm so inspired about the education cause, and now I want to help everyone. So I come and like just apply. And then reality hits me. I'm like, oh, that takes a lot of time. I can't do that. Same goes with nonprofit as well, right? You sign up onto the platform and you're like, oh, I think I also need a promotional video. I also need a website. I also need some content to be written, because everything looks like I have that problem. But it's important for you to be realistic around what can you prioritize and what can you even practically do. That's where in our company, at least Chezuba's team helps you out with that, to give you a more realistic picture to it and say like, can you really handle all of this? If not, maybe like figure out what is a priority. Let's do this first and then let's do the things next. So it's about, yes, there is no cap logistically speaking, but realistically, we definitely recommend people to be more practical.
No, that's actually really helpful, because you do get really excited when you see that there's someone who's saying, I can help you, and you think of all the things you want to get accomplished. I think it's sometimes you have to balance that with, you still have to manage the volunteers and manage work that's happening. So keeping that in perspective, it's wonderful that your team also helps balance that as well. Victor, did you have a question as well?
Yeah, so first, thanks Sukhendra for the session. I think it was great and it will help many of our organizations. And I have a question from our registration forms. I mean, we have several, but you have answered most of them, but there is one that asks, is regarding your platform. So can I register my organization to look for volunteers, but at the same time, me volunteering for others?
That's a good question. Yes, you can do that. But when you register your nonprofit, you're registering the organization. And when you're registering as an individual, you're doing it on your own individual capacity. From just a technical aspect, because our user IDs are based on emails, you can't use the exact same email to be a nonprofit and a volunteer. That's just a very technical thing. But you can literally have 2 different accounts. One is a volunteer and one is a nonprofit. You could do that. if you want to. But I mean, if you're a nonprofit, many times you're so caught up with your own nonprofit's work, right? So I'd be a little surprised if you have more time to also volunteer. But yes, if you do, yes, you could volunteer as well.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent. All right. Does anybody else have any questions? I'm looking in the Q&A, seeing if I see any hands raised. I don't see any, but we would be happy to answer any questions if you want to direct them to GAAPP. And please check out the website, because I think, GAAPP utilizes the service. Tanya, did you have anything you wanted to add, or?
No, sounds great. Again, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for that really wonderful presentation. And I know that we'll be contacting you. Several of us will be reaching out and working alongside you. We really appreciate the help in just getting the work done to achieve our missions.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for inviting me, and thanks a lot for each of you, for doing great stuff. I mean, nonprofits definitely are, in my opinion, as important as the governments, right? Like to get to that grassroots and to create that impact. Thanks, GAAPP, for all these webinars, which I think most nonprofits really need assistance with in getting connected to the right people, getting this information out. So thanks a lot for your time as well, ensuring that more and more awareness is spread to nonprofits and more education is being provided to them. And yeah, I'm very grateful for all the work nonprofits are doing, and we'll always try to do anything that we could to potentially scale all the impact.